Tonight, the UK accuses Israel of presiding over a grotesque spectacle in Gaza. As the UK, France and 23 other countries say the war must end now, the Foreign Secretary says Israel's new aid system is depriving Gazans of human dignity. I'll be joined by the senior Labour MP Emily Thornberry, who says it's time for the UK to recognise a Palestinian state. Also tonight, as Nigel Farage's Reform UK unveils a £17 billion plan to tackle crime, I'll be speaking to one of their newest recruits from the Conservatives. We'll take you through what's been announced as part of the biggest review of the water industry since privatisation. And as the flags of 50 historic counties are flown right here in Westminster, how many can you recognise? We've got a quiz for you. Flying the flag for intelligent, witty, well-informed political chat, James Starkey and Belle Ribeiro Addy, who'll be with us for the next hour. It's Monday, I'm Sophy Ridge live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. 25 countries, including the United Kingdom, have joined together to call for an immediate end to the war in Gaza. They say that the suffering of civilians in Gaza has reached new depths, and they specifically condemn the way that aid is being delivered, describing it as dangerous, saying it deprives Gazans of human dignity. And of course, on Sunday, there were more reports of people being killed while scrambling to get food. This was David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, in the House of Commons earlier.
I utterly condemn the killing of civilians seeking to meet their basic needs. The Israeli government must answer what possible military justification can there be for strikes that have killed desperate, starving children? What immediate actions are they taking to stop this litany of horrors? And what will they do to hold those responsible to account?
That was David Lammy in the last hour, and Keir Starmer also spoke out today as well.
I think that we need to use the coming weeks to push further on credible plans for the next phase of Gaza. If we get to a ceasefire, we need to push past that and on to better regionally supported reconstruction efforts and supporting of the Arab plan. And I think we should play a leading part in that.
So that was a PM there saying the United Kingdom should play a leading part in the next phase for Gaza. The thing is, though, it is hard to see how that happens, because the Israeli government has rejected today's call for an end to the war, saying it's divorced from reality. And look, the truth is that Benjamin Netanyahu isn't listening to Donald Trump, let alone Keir Starmer and David Lammy. It's not so much a battle for influence, but for any relevance at all. Well, let's speak now to Sky's political correspondent Liz Bates, who is at the Foreign Office. Liz, what's your assessment of what the UK is saying?
Well, first of all, today, Sophie, quite clearly a fresh push from the Prime Minister alongside the Foreign Secretary to pile international pressure onto Israel to push towards a ceasefire. And I think the thing that stood out most today was particularly the way that the Foreign Secretary spoke in relation to Israel, an ally, a country that you remember when hostilities kicked off in the region, the UK was standing firmly beside Israel and saying it had the right to defend itself. Well, we are in a very, very different position today, and that is because of the unfolding humanitarian disaster in Gaza, and that was really the focus today of some pretty strong language from the Foreign Secretary. As you said, he called the situation in Gaza a grotesque spectacle. He accused the Israeli government of depriving Gazans of human dignity, and that's particularly in relation to the way that aid is being delivered on the ground, the targeting of those who are trying to access aid, and the attempted evacuation, removal of Gazans from the region, which both the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister today condemned as wholly unacceptable. And that is how we've got to the situation of a statement alongside 25 international allies, other countries, including France, Australia, I won't name them all, Austria, Belgium, Norway. Crucially, of course, though, not the United States, but very strong as well, this statement in its language. We call on the Israeli government to immediately lift restrictions on the flow of aid and to urgently enable the UN and humanitarian NGOs to do their life-saving work safely and effectively, and another call in here for a political pathway to a ceasefire. I think it's worth, though, bringing you, as you mentioned, Sophie, Israel's reaction this evening. It says on a statement on social media, Israel rejects the joint statement published by a group of countries as it is disconnected from reality and sends the wrong message to Hamas. I won't read the whole thing, but it also concludes, at these sensitive moments in the ongoing negotiations, it is better to avoid statements of this kind. So an unequivocal rebuttal, a refusal to engage with this from Israel, as we have now seen many, many times. So, look, the voices strong from the UK alongside international allies, but whether they are being heard in Israel, well, the statement today suggests not.
And really, that is the important thing, isn't it? Liz, thank you very much indeed. Liz Bates speaking to us there. Well, let's get more, shall we, on what is going on right now in Gaza and, of course, in Israel as well. Our correspondent Lisa Holland is reporting from Jerusalem.
My son, my love, says this man, cradling his dead child as others cower nearby in the face of Israeli gunshots. This video has emerged of Sunday's mass killing. Palestinians say they are starving and were massacred as they went in search of food. Around 100 people died in this single incident, according to the Gazan Health Ministry. Israel disputes the figure, saying its soldiers came under threat, trying to control a crowd of thousands. Vehicle after vehicle carrying the dead and injured arrive at the Al-Shifa hospital. At a place called Zakim, these people had tried to get food off the back of trucks crossing over the border between Israel and northern Gaza. This man survived Zakim. Painfully thin, he says he hasn't eaten for 5 days.
We went there to get food. We are not thieves. Do you think if I had a bag of flour, I would march to my death?
How long are they going to keep doing this to us? We want to eat. People are dying of hunger.
These pictures were filmed at the Zakim crossing a month ago. Again, people going with their rucksacks, hoping to grab food before the aid trucks travel further into the Gaza Strip. Since then, things have significantly deteriorated. Food and fuel shortages are chronic. We can't verify these figures, but Gaza's health ministry says 18 people have died of malnourishment in the past 24 hours.
People are absolutely exhausted, but I think most importantly is they are dropping on the roads because of hunger. People are struggling to find very, very little food for themselves and for their children.
As the UN called for its stockpiles of food to be allowed in from neighbouring countries, and Britain joined more than 20 other nations to demand an immediate ceasefire, Israel issued displacement orders to thousands more people in Deir el-Balah in central Gaza, showing no sign of wanting the war to end. Lisa Holland, Sky News, Jerusalem.
The former Shadow Foreign Secretary, now Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Emily Thornberry, is here. Great to have you on the programme, as always. What's your reaction for this joint call for an end to the war in Gaza?
Well, it was pretty powerful. The Foreign Secretary, in fact, said that there were more countries signing up. So he said that there were 31 countries now. I don't know if that's right. But whilst those countries are signing it, Israel, by almost return of post, puts up a post on social media just rejecting it, completely out of hand, and saying that it's divorced from reality. It's insulting. It's another example of Israel, this far-right government in Israel, just not listening to their friends and to their allies. And so we have to think about what it is that we can do to make sure they do listen. And I think the most obvious thing is listen, more than 80% of people in Israel, from what I understand, want there to be a ceasefire and want the hostages returned. So we're talking to this far-right government. We're not talking to the Israeli people. But this far-right government has to understand that they must stop. And so how do we make sure that they understand that it must stop? There's one chain of thought, which is that he's just stumbling to the end of term. On the 27th of July, the Israeli parliament breaks up, and so he can't be removed from power. So he could have a ceasefire in the meantime. There is an argument that the far-right people who are far-right people who are propping him up will take away his support if he has a ceasefire. So those who are trying to hold on to something say, well, maybe he'll have a ceasefire over the summer when they're not around to undermine him. But the other way, I think, is to say, well, the only person he does listen to, as far as we can tell, is Donald Trump. And so therefore, rather than trying to speak to the Israelis, we're now, I think, in a position where we have to be speaking directly to Donald Trump and say, you have the strength of 10 presidents. You can get the Israelis to listen to you in a way that no other American president has done. You must get them to stop.
So it's interesting. I just want to unpick a bit what you're saying here. So first, you think that effectively what Keir Starmer says, what David Lammy says, is kind of irrelevant as far as Benjamin Netanyahu is concerned?
As far as he's concerned, I think that not as far as the region is concerned. I think it's important that we're in the right place in the region and retaining our influence by being in the right place. And I think not as far as most Israeli people are concerned. I'm talking about these extremists who are running Israel at the moment. They don't listen.
So you think that the message now, the focus now, needs to be on sending a tougher message to Donald Trump? That's
getting Donald Trump to be the one who gives the message. Because, Donald Trump got them to turn their planes around in the air and, because they were on their way to another bombing raid in Iran, and Donald Trump's even stopped that. So he is somebody they listen to. And I don't know of anybody else that they do. So it seems to me, just trying to be pragmatic here, and I appreciate that we have a fairly good relationship with Donald Trump compared to most countries. And I also appreciate that we don't want to use up all our political capital. But it does seem to me that this is one of the things that we should be using our political capital on.
Do you think that there is perhaps a kind of hesitation in Number 10 about upsetting Donald Trump, about irritating him? I don't mean to sound flippant there, because as you say, we have a certain amount of political capital to spend. There's an awful lot of things we want to get across the line with him. But you think that this should be the priority, right?
I think, well, I don't know. There are so many priorities. This must be a priority, but Ukraine must be a priority. We have used a certain amount of political capital, and we've done it successfully, and we've been a force for good when it comes to Ukraine. I think that we could with Israel, and I think that we have to. And what I really think is that we saw Macron coming to Britain, and when he addressed Parliament, the British Parliament, he said we should recognise. And I know that most people in the room agreed with him. And I think that, and most of us in the room agreed that we should be doing it immediately, which is also what Macron said.
So you're talking here about recognising Palestine as a state?
Recognise Palestine as a state. And that's not going to stop the killing, not immediately. But what it should do is be like a starting gun for a renewed initiative.
Why do you think Keir Starmer hasn't done that?
I think because Keir Starmer has we all want the same thing. He just has a different idea of how to get there. And I think he's wrong about that. So I think for a long time he's thought that recognition should be part of a peace process. And my view is that there's going to be no Palestine left to recognise unless we recognise. And actually, it's time for desperate measures. And I think that what we should be doing is recognising, showing that we're players, showing that we're acting in good faith, working with the French. People may remember this famous treaty called Sykes-Picot from 100 years ago, when Britain and France carved up the Middle East. If Britain and France, it was pretty disgraceful, but anyway, we did it. Yeah. But Britain and France coming together now, and saying, we now, Palestine should be a state, and we together believe that, and we together want to work with the Arabs. We want to be able to work with Arab countries, with players in the region. We want to be able to put together a peace plan, and then we want to bring in Donald Trump and say, Donald Trump, you need to put pressure on the Israelis. They have to agree to this because they have no serious plan I mean, if they had something else, then that'd be a different matter.
I need to, as always in interviews, put alternative perspectives. Right?
No,
That's part of my job. And
Absolutely,
I think that there are some in Israel and within that government who think that, look, this is existential.
Yes.
And that they have made progress through force in things like Iran, for example, against Hezbollah and against Hamas. Think into countries or terrorist organisations that want them eliminated. What would you say to that?
I would say that I have absolute sympathy for Israel in their belief that they have Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, all of them saying that they want to eliminate Israel, and Iran as well. And I think that the only way in which Israel can be safe and secure in the region and not constantly at war is by agreeing to a solution that will allow for there to be some peace and tranquility in the region, which means giving the Palestinians what they need, which is a state of their own, and then for the countries of the region to have Israel's back, and for the rest of the world to have responsibility to ensure that we have Israel's back, and that at last Israel could have a peaceful place within the region, and actually the region could really take off if it wasn't constantly at war. And I just think that for the sake of Israeli children and Palestinian children, this is what we have to do. We have to find a peaceful solution. And as I say, I am open to suggestions from Israel, but they have no serious... I've spoken to many, Israeli politicians, and I have yet to hear anything serious from them. If they want to have one state, then actually I'm fine about that. But they won't have a largely Jewish democratic state if they have one state, because there's an awful lot of Palestinians there. So what do they want to do? I mean, if they want to do that, that's fine, but I don't think they do. But the Palestinians are not going anywhere. The Israelis are not going anywhere. So what's the solution? The solution is what we have said for 40, 50 years, 2 states. And I don't really understand, given that it's such a pillar of our foreign policy, why we can't then say we agree with 2 states and we recognise the second state.
Emily Thornbury, thank you very much indeed. Always good to have you on the programme.
Nice to be here.
Emily Thornbury, there speaking to us, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Of course, the situation in Gaza is sure to feature in tomorrow's newspapers, as has so many times, of course, recently as well. We're going to have our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us will be the political commentator Adam Bolton, and the Guardian's political editor Pippa Keir will also be in the chair as well. Right, let's bring in our duo for the evening, shall we? The former Conservative Special Advisor James Starkey and Labour's Belle Ribiera-Addy, who last week was stripped of her role as trade envoy to Ghana after she voted against the government's cuts to welfare reforms. Great to have you both on the programme today. Belle, to you first. I'm sure you just heard a bit of what Emily Thornbury was saying. She was effectively saying that she would like the government to go further in recognising Palestine as a state and putting more pressure on Donald Trump.
I completely agree with her. I mean, consecutive governments have said that that's what they want to do, and we have to wonder what it is that they're waiting for. The only way we're going to get to a place of peace and proper negotiation if both parties are on equal standing, and we can't do that if one is recognised as a state and one is not. And we know at the moment what having Israel having control over Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories has meant for Palestinians. And looking at your report from earlier, it's meant violence, it's meant death.
James, what's your take on this?
I mean, I think, I understand where Emily's coming from, the 2 states, and I think at the moment it would be performative, because the reality is it looks like Netanyahu isn't hugely listening to Trump. If he's ever going to listen to anyone, it's probably going to be Trump in the US, because they've fundamentally, Israel need them, certainly in the medium to long term. So I think so far as countries like ourselves and our allies, one of the areas, the area we should be focusing most on is what pressure can we put on the United States to put pressure on Netanyahu, because it's quite clear that over months and months we've, and I'm sure there's frustrations amongst many people, not least in the Labour Party, about our government not doing more.
That's true.
I understand that, but I think it's limited effect. It's been shown to have a limited effect on Netanyahu and Israel. It's going to come from the United States.
But we're not doing, I think, the extent to what we could do. So, yes, I understand that pressure from the United States would be great, but if we are not also doing our own bit... I mean, we're signatories of the Genocide Convention. We're meant to be doing all we can to prevent this, but yet we continue to sell arms. You know, we won't recognise the state of Palestine and so many other things that we could be doing to put pressure on Israel. So yes, we may need outside help, but we're still not doing everything we can. And having to watch this on our news every single day, I mean, it makes me sick that we are sitting here and for over a year, we've literally just watched a genocide happen before our eyes.
But I'd be curious to know, for example, on the kind of US aspect, how much, when the Prime Minister had those meetings, meeting with Trump recently, and how much of Peter Mandelson's time, the UK ambassador to Washington, and David Lammy's time, has been spent lobbying the US government to do something? I mean, we've heard a lot about the trade deals they've got, so there's a relationship there. We heard a lot about how well, versus some other world leaders, Starmer did when he was over in the States. My point is, I think that's where it's going to come from. It's going to be concerted. It's not just going to come from the UK. It's going to be with allies like France and Canada. But I think it's going to come more from that than statements like we've seen today.
It's interesting, isn't it? As you say, it's perhaps like a joint thing of trying to put international pressure, but coming from the States as well. Although recently it almost seems as if Netanyahu has perhaps not been listening to Donald Trump as much as previously as well. Thanks very much. We heard from Keir Starmer, of course, discussing some of this at the liaison committee. He was also taking questions from MPs there about how he thinks his first year in office has been. I think we can have a listen.
Are you saying you would do nothing differently? Because, I mean, you just talked about bringing people in from outside Whitehall to help shape the agenda. Is that something that you want to do more of?
Well, yes, but I do. I mean, if I may carry on, we've done 4.5 million extra appointments on the NHS. That is remarkable. Nobody thought it could be done. We've got a 10-year plan for the NHS.
So you talked about wanting to engage with Parliament more, for example. Is there anything in it? Just, I mean, it's not over a year. You had a chance to do this huge, the biggest job in the country. Very big challenge, huge challenge. Is there anything you would, what different approach you've taken now you've had to sat in the hot seat?
Oh, I think we could engage Parliament more. I don't doubt that.
Al, I'm interested to know what you think of that response. You obviously lost your sort of job, your trade envoy to Ghana, over your decision to go against the government on welfare, although, of course, I'd say that they've now perhaps come round to your position, if that makes sense. And what did you think there, listening to Keir Starmer talking about engaging more with MPs?
Obviously, I think that's extremely important. What happened over the welfare reforms shows that we can't just take things to a vote without consulting people. It was extremely embarrassing, I would say. I mean, I asked MPs that have been MPs for longer than I have. Have you ever seen anything like that? Literally changing legislation on the floor of the House. That's not something that is done. And ultimately, I think we should be allowed to express different views. I think that's what makes a democracy work.
Were you shocked to lose your role?
I was, more so because it's not a ministerial role, it's a voluntary role, but, you know, it's the Prime Minister's decision. There are Lib Dem and I think there have been Conservative trade envoys in the past. So for me, I thought to myself, OK, that's a bit strange, because I didn't see it as one bound by collective responsibility.
Had they spoken to you much about it before, or not really had those conversations?
No, not really. And obviously it's not the first time that I've broken the whip. And obviously I understand that, you know,
maybe
we're
that's
not
part
really...
of the problem, I guess.
Well, maybe. But, you know, I think previous Labour leaders haven't withdrawn the whip for people expressing a different view in the way in which they vote. I've always understood that there are some key things that you wouldn't vote against, perhaps right at the beginning of a parliament, but not necessarily other types of legislation. If other people haven't done it, I suppose people are a bit confused about why it's happening now.
James, I'm interested in your take on this. It's like, you know, kind of like a long-time Westminster strategist, if I can put it like that. How do you think Number 10 handled it all?
Very poorly. I think the problem they've got themselves into, and I was reading some kind of both public and off-the-record quotes from some MPs, they've got themselves into the problem that our last government got themselves into, which is, on the one hand, when you do a U-turn, you actually annoy two groups of people. So you've got a group of people who've been campaigning to make a change, and the government ignores them, and they kind of hold on to the last minute. It's all a bit chaotic, and to the public it just seems quite weak, and you probably don't get any credit for the thing you've done as the government. It just looks like you've kind of backed down to people. But the other set of people you ignore are the loyalists, because they're the ones who have probably sat in a chair like this and defended a difficult decision for their constituents to you.
One
on
that they might
TV.
not have agreed with as well.
One that they might not have agreed with. They might have had a lot of stuff in their inbox. And they're going through, and you only go through a few of them, you start to build up frustrations. I saw it very closely with the last Conservative government, and I'm sure you had conversations with MPs privately, that they get fed up of defending something. And then what happens is they sit on here and they defend it a bit less because they think the U-turn's coming. And then on the other side, the people that are campaigning think, well, if we push hard enough, we could probably get them to fold. And we'll see this on the two-child benefit cap.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more worried about what it says to people because that's who we're actually there to represent. We're meant to represent people. They were, my constituents, most people's constituents were firmly against this. They were really, really saying, we can't move forward in this way. And the idea that I suppose people might be punished for thinking this way might make people feel a bit further away from us as a government, and I don't think it's right. It's about the message that it sends to people, more than the message it sends to MPs. I mean, we are where we are. Our constituents are the most important thing.
Really interesting to talk. Thanks both very much indeed. Lots more from you throughout the show as well. You're watching the Politics Hub coming up. Nigel Farage says he's going to halve crime in 5 years if Reform UK get into government. We're going to speak to the party's newest recruit, the former Conservative Layla Cunningham, who defected to Reform last month. That's next.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
He did it very affectionately. Daddy, you're my daddy.
Leicester is on its knees. It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
There's nothing to hide. One international journalist allowed it.
The founding principle of the alliance that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
One, two, three. Say,
These Southern boys are fixing critters.
This is the first Peacock microchip.
You don't see many axolotls from everywhere. And there's no place they'd rather be.
Hey, what's been going on?
Pretty big boys there.
Hakuna Matata. Animals will find a way to get injured. How do you eat a whole sock?
The craziest ones find their way to critter fixing. Hey, let the journey continue. Appreciate you.
Brand new Critter Fixers start Sunday the 10th of August on Wild.
Hello, welcome back. Now, Nigel Farage says he's going to take back control of Britain's streets and halve crime if Reform UK manage to form a government. Flanked by the Reform UK MP Sarah Pochin and our next guest, that's Lola Cunningham, he announced a Donald Trump-style initiative to send foreign prisoners to partner nations, such as Central America, and described the law and order situation in the UK as grim and serious.
You say you want to deport almost 10,500 foreign criminals. So you say countries like Estonia are willing to take them back. Are you confident all of the countries that these people are from will take them back? And in exchange, will you agree to take all of our foreign criminals who are in other countries? And just secondly, on these Nightingale prisons, if you erect these prisons very quickly, how secure will they be? What kind of criminals would you be securing in these Nightingale prisons? You know, will the public be concerned that they will essentially be able to escape?
Right. The answer to your first question is yes. Of course we're prepared to take British prisoners from other parts of the world. That's fair, right and proper. All right? So no question, argument about that. As I say, I'm in talks with Eddie Rama from Albania. In fact, I might even go and visit him over the course of the summer. Perhaps I'll charter a jet and take a load with me. And look, you know, if countries are reluctant to take back their prisoners, well, we'll make it very straightforward. We'll just end travel, we'll end visa restrictions. So we've got plenty of muscle to be able to do this, and that's right and proper, and it's what we should do. That was for existing prisoners. As I say, you know, the secondary consideration would be that you can send a prisoner to serve their sentence in Estonia, and that's going to cost the British taxpayer about 20,000 a year, as opposed to the current 50,000 a year, and I think that would be overwhelmingly popular with the public. On security, look, we're not talking about building high-security prisons. What we are talking about is no longer ignoring crimes that are now considered to be petty. We think all crime is serious. So these Nightingale prisons would be for a lower category of offender, but it would send the message that if you commit crime and you're caught and convicted in this country, you will go to prison.
Nigel Farage there talking to our correspondent Mari Aurora. Well, I spoke to the Reform UK's Lola Cunningham, who defected to the party from the Conservatives last month. She was sitting next to Nigel Farage there. Thank you very much for being on the Politics Hub today. It's good to have you in studio. So, Reform pledging today to halve all crime in 5 years if you were to be in power. Just talk me through how you'd do that.
There are many measures. One is that we'd hire 30,000 extra police officers. But it's not only about hiring, it's hiring the right police officers, and it's instilling respect for police and making it a job that people actually want to do. I've spoken to a few sergeants in the Met, and they've told me they've got a real recruiting issue because there is no more respect for police officers. It's not a job that people want to do. And I think just seeing a police officer walk down the street is a huge deterrent, and I don't see any where I live.
So what, you say the right kind of police officers. What does that mean?
I don't know if, I'm sure you know that, but they were conducting interviews online before and not in person. And I think you need interviews in person. That's when you really get to know someone, you look them in the eye. Good old-fashioned human instinct that you would have in an interview that fails. And that's, sadly, we have seen some rogue police officers. Also, the murderer of Sarah Everard, you know, there were concerns before. He was caught flashing. You know, that should have been immediate dismissal, but it wasn't.
And Sarah Pochin has talked about, you know, perhaps reintroducing the height, like a minimum height requirement, for example. Is that the sort of thing that you would support?
I haven't heard Sarah say that.
A bit more freelancing, maybe, then.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know about the height restriction. For me, it's more your attitude and why you go into policing.
And how about women as well? Are you kind of comfortable seeing, like, for example, like 2 female officers on patrol, or do you think that actually there should be, you know, guys there as well?
Oh, absolutely. I was invited as a criminal prosecutor to the police dojo, where they put us in very high-risk situations, make-believe. And I fought with some of those women who are pretending to be criminals, and they are hardcore.
Because that's something that she said. She said that, you know, she wouldn't be comfortable seeing 2 female officers on patrol.
I haven't heard her say that. I don't have any issues with female police officers. I think some are very dedicated to the force. All the women I've come across in the force have been very dedicated and put themselves in very difficult situations to protect us.
And also, I was interested on the stuff on prisons as well, right? Because a lot of this stuff is also kind of toughening up the perspective on prisons. So you want to build new prisons in disused MOD land. How many kind of new prison officers do you think you would need to staff those prisons?
I don't think we've got down to the operational needs as such. There's a few years to flush out the policy, but we are thinking of adding 12,400 new prison spaces. And I'd like to point out to Oakwood Prison, which has actually, their running cost is about 19,000 per prisoner, whereas the average is 33 for Category C. And the way they do it is they have modular builds and they support many thousands of prisoners. So the fixed costs are spread out over more prisoners. And I think that's what we'll be looking to do.
Look, I understand, I completely understand that Reform want to prioritise tackling crime, that you want to look at sending more people to prison. You know, that's a policy that you have. But I guess my point is, you know, is it really realistic to just say, oh, we're going to work out all that stuff about how many new prison officers we need at a later date? It just doesn't feel like it's a, you know, realistic policy. You know, if I had a Labour or Conservative politician here saying that, you know, I'd have a go at them. So you need to have the same, you know, the same kind of scrutiny, right?
No, of course. And 4 years down the line, I can guarantee you we'll have a very, very detailed
But you've announced a policy today, though.
Yeah, we've announced how many new prison places we'd construct. And perhaps in the policy, there is the number of prison officers. I don't know that offhand right now.
Yeah, I couldn't see it in the briefing note. I guess, you know, there is a kind of question about how sort of serious this is as a policy. You know, anyone can say what they like to do. You know, I'd like to sort of, you know, score a winning goal in a Champions League final, but, you know, it's about whether you can make it happen, right?
So about scoring a Champions League, you got to first of all build the good team, right? And that's what we're building. And the good team would include more prisons and the right approach to crime. And then you decide who's going to take the free kick, but you don't decide until you're in front of that penalty shot. You don't decide before. And as the detail will come. But right now, we want the public to be assured that we mean business when we're going to say that we are going to cut crime by half.
But how can the public believe that if you don't have these, you know, quite nuts and bolts answer to the question?
But you're focusing on one nuts and bolts, which is how many prison officers.
That's quite important, though, isn't it? It's not like
I think the prison space is what's more important. Do you know how many prison officers there are now?
Well, I'm not announcing a policy, though, am I?
No, and I think if you asked any minister, I don't think they could pull a number as for hats. What we're facing now is a severe shortage of prison space. The fact that they're releasing violent criminals early for me, is a real insult to victims. And if we can build more space for those, and also we're talking about deporting foreign prisoners and sending them to prisons abroad, just like Denmark did. And it's worked very well, and you've seen it in the US, it's worked very well.
So just looking at on prisons, you're saying that you'd spend around £1 billion, you know, a year on these extra prison places and the extra prisons that you put in there as well.
Yeah.
Where's that money going to come from?
Money will come from reducing the cost of prisoners, so it will pay itself. So right now, prisoners, high security prisons are costing about 52,000, and in France the average is about 40.
So what are you going to cut? What are you going to cut then?
You can cut staff. You can cut managerial staff.
Introduce more prison officers, though, aren't you?
Yeah, but when you have more prisons and they cover more prisoners, all those fixed costs are spread. As opposed to small prisons. And don't forget, we're going to send more abroad. So sending them abroad, we'd pay 25,000 per prison space as opposed to 52,000.
OK. You have spoken before. I'm interested about your kind of story a bit as well, right? Because you've spoken a bit more about, you know, being a mum of teenagers, about living in London, and about not feeling safe. Just talk to me a little bit more about what that's been like.
So I have a few teenagers at home, and I grew up in London. I used to play basketball in my local league, and I used to, at the age of 12, I'd go down to Brixton, Newham. These parts were not as nice as they are now. And my parents never worried about me in the way that I worry about my children. My boys in particular, I mean, one's been mugged at knife points, and another one's been mugged. And it was up to me to do the legwork for the police, because I'd ring the police. So one of them, I followed the mugger down to the basement in McDonald's, our local McDonald's, and they told me, I'm sorry, we just do not have enough resources. Another time, there were consistent muggers. They were targeting my kids and their friends. And I had to do the legwork, so I would take photos of them, I would follow them to local estates, because they wear balaclavas so you could recognise them from their shoes. I would tell the police what estate they're from. I would speak to all the local shops who sell stolen phones, and I said, you know, I'm watching you. If you sell these, it's going to be counterfeit. You're going to be an accomplice. And I've said this many times, I don't want, but the press called me vigilante mum. But it's not something that I wear with pride. I don't want to risk my life. But any mother knows, anyone messes with your children, you see red, you'll do whatever it takes.
Were you frightened?
No, actually, I was so angry. When my son told me he was mugged straight after school in Sainsbury's, the guy told him, if you snitch, I'll kill you. I went down from my house and I roamed the streets with severe anger. I'm like, nobody messes with my child. But I don't advise anyone to do that. It's just, you see red, especially when you know the police aren't going to do anything. The police did catch him eventually. But in terms of, my son didn't want to report it at all. He was told, if you snitch, I'll kill you.
But the police did get them.
They did get him because he was brazen and committed a bunch of them. But my son was the only one that appeared as a witness at the trial because the other youth were scared.
Nigel Farage has said today that people don't understand how close to civil disobedience we are on a vast scale. Do you agree with him?
I do, because I'm frustrated. I want to protest in the street. I'm angry at what they've done to this country. I'm born and raised here, and I love Britain, but it is unsafe. I was in Chicago and New York on holiday because my husband's American, and so many people were like, oh my God, we've heard about what's going on in London or in the UK. Are you guys okay? You know,
we are okay, though, right? I mean, I live in London, like, you know.
You're okay because maybe you come to work in a taxi or an Uber, but, you know, for
I don't, by the way, but yeah.
No, for teenage, you know, if I'm on the train with my son and he sees someone in a balaclava, he is petrified. And that's been allowed to proliferate. And as a prosecutor, I know that knives are hidden in so many bushes, so many playgrounds, and it's just changed. The fabric of the country's changed. People don't feel safe anymore.
OK, it's great to have you on the programme.
Thank you
very much, Hannah. Right, let's bring back in James and Belle, shall we? James, I'm interested in your take on this. You know, Reform launching their big law and order package today. How do you think it went?
I mean, I think they're tapping into a public mood. There's no doubt that there's concern that the police aren't tackling crime as they should. There's, you know, you can read the paper every day. There's stories of people not even reporting crime anymore or incidents around particularly London. I think when you look at it, so I think their kind of vibes, if you like, which is what Reform are mainly running on, is working really well for them. When you dig deeper, I think they're going to get away with that fine for the next year or two, maybe 3. I think as we get close to the next one, they will have to put detail. And watching that interview and a couple of others recently, they really struggle to explain where the money's coming from, how this will be done. You know, dare I say it, from having been in the Conservative Party, when you say you're going to get a deal with a country to do returns or something, at some point you have to say who that country is, because otherwise people don't believe you. So I think, you know, all of those things are to come for them. I think for a while it's fine. And I think, look, they're tapping into a public mood on this, and that's the issue for other parties.
Belle, what do you think?
I think, you know, I agree that people are really, really worried and people are angry and they want something to be done, and sometimes reporting doesn't get the effect that you want. Sometimes it takes the police a while to show up because they're busy tackling other things, particularly with antisocial behaviour. But I think their plans are quite naive. I mean, we've heard all this kind of, you know, we need to be really tough, and if we put more people in prison, and I think they're asking for bigger police officers, something like that.
Well, Sarah Pochin says there should be a minimum height requirement, but then later in that interview said that, you know, she doesn't think it's about that, it's more about the individuals. So
yeah,
I don't think it's official policy.
OK, but what is official policy? That's the question. And we need to kind of move away from this toughness, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be tough on crime, but actually getting down to why people are committing crimes, looking at those social interventions, because opening more prisons, attempting to send people abroad, which is a bureaucratic nightmare, but as you know, it's not going to happen. These things are not going to work, and we have spent so little time in attempting to be tough because people are upset that we haven't focused on why people are committing these crimes and what's happening. I think of one police force years and years ago that found out that, had a look into why crime was increasing, and they found out that it was drug use. So they put more resources into drug rehabilitation, and hey presto, crime went down. We need to look at the root causes.
Really interesting. I could talk about this for an awfully long time as well, but we are going to move on. Thank you both very much indeed. The water regulator, I want to talk about this now because it is a big story as well. So the water regulator Ofwat will be scrapped as part of an overhaul of what's been described as a broken regulatory system. So a landmark report into the water industry in England and Wales has made 88 recommendations to try and fix the industry, including compulsory water meters and a social tariff for vulnerable customers. Now, the report's author said that bills will likely rise by as much as 30% above inflation in the next 5 years to support investment in infrastructure. Here's Sky's business and economics correspondent Paul Kelsey.
When it rains, we know what pours from storm overflows, sewage mixed with wastewater straight into our rivers. A legacy of an ageing system and decades of underinvestment that a review now promises to address. Its author comparing today's metaphorical mess to the great stink that triggered the Victorian sewer revolution.
If we are to achieve the water sector we need to look at all the factors that have contributed to our great stink moment. And the water industry, of course, is at the heart of this. And the industry as a whole has not met public expectations or maintained public trust in recent years.
The key recommendation accepted by government, replacing Ofwat with a single body responsible for economic and environmental regulation.
What we're doing is getting rid of the gaps in regulation by bringing the functions from 4 separate regulators together in one new super regulator, ensuring that they have the teeth they need to enforce against what water companies are doing wrong.
Public anger at pollution is matched by concern over executive pay and dividends, while investors cite the plight of Thames Water in danger of collapse as evidence the sector has become too risky. With nationalisation ruled out from the start, Bank of England veteran Sir John says stronger regulation and clearer direction from government is the answer.
I think when companies are delivering what they're set up to do, when the private interests of the shareholders are lined up with the public interests in producing water, sanitation, respecting the environment, those returns will come out. And whether it's publicly owned or privately owned, there will need to be borrowing to finance this, and borrowing costs go up.
With the government having ruled out nationalising water companies, that leaves only the reality of a privatised system. The investment required to cut sewage, reduce leaks, improve water quality and future-proof infrastructure against climate change and population growth will only come if those companies are profitable and pay a return to investors. And only customers can pay for that. For some campaigners, that's simply unacceptable.
Until we look at privatisation and the end of it, we will never see true transition. We need to look to Europe and America, learn from them, and then put this industry back into special administration, if you like, starting with Thames Water and removing the profit motive, replacing it with public benefit and environmental performance.
Creating the new water regulator could take 2 years. Refloating public confidence, longer still. Paul Kelso, Sky News.
Let's talk again to James and Belle, shall we? Belle, you were just showing as a photo just in the break of a sinkhole in your constituency, and I have to say, like around where I live, it feels like almost every week there is another leak and road closures and road works. I mean, what is actually going on?
I have no idea, but the main thing that is happening is that Thames Water, in particular, I'm sure there are other water companies across the country, are failing. Just like you, I have a number of different leaks right across my constituency at any one time. And a lot of the time they've actually left people without water, vulnerable people with babies that may need the water to mix formula and things like that. And it's always so disruptive. They are taking money, charging customers more and more, and not really investing in the infrastructure, but still paying their shareholders and paying huge bonuses. And then they ask us, the government, to bail them out, which means that we are paying them twice. What for? For a poor service. And their privatisation, I agree with the campaigners, it has to end, because ultimately the whole argument for privatisation is competition. And quite frankly, I can't drink water from Yorkshire. I have to drink water from Thames. There is no competition, so there should be no privatisation.
Yeah, you can't just say, actually, you know what, I don't like Thames Water very much, I'm going to switch supplier. Yeah, exactly. James, what do you think? Sometimes, privatisation is kind of thrown around as a solution, but what's your take on it?
I think, privatisation has worked to a large extent. You saw water quality improve quite dramatically in the 90s. In the noughties is where we saw huge amounts of money taken out of the sector, if you like, through dividends. And that's why, particularly Thames Water, I think about 30% of your, if you're a Thames Water customer, about 30% of your bill goes to pay for their debt.
Don't tell me this, please.
And so I think there's questions where there are many water companies doing really good things around the environment, and they have invested, and the success stories. And so, and as usual, the bad ones will become representative of the bunch. That's the problem for the sector. But I think what people will ask themselves, why are we propping up a failing company? I think where the government is right is to look at regulation. There's clearly too many different parts moving, consolidate them into one. I think that's very sensible. Give a clearer long-term plan. And the fact is they are where they are. So you can blame the water companies, you can blame the past Conservative governments. And if anything, we probably did focus too much on keeping bills down rather than investment over the past 10 to 15 years. And the fact is they've got to plug that gap. It's going to have to come from the consumer. And I think taking that hit now and trying to sort it out, they've got to keep the bonuses and the dividends down over the next 5 to 10 years. Because if people see their bill increase going to banks, that's not going to look good.
I think down is too generous. They've got to get rid of them altogether. I'm sorry, it's just this idea of having to pay twice. We pay them an increased bill so that they are able to maintain our water service and fix the infrastructure. And then we're just paying them again. We also have to pay for them to fix the infrastructure. If the government's already going to pay for them to fix the infrastructure, why doesn't the government just run the water company?
I think when the government's done this before, it hasn't done it very well, is the problem. And so, I mean, one, if you're going to get the investment in, a capital investment in, you're going to have to offer some type of return. I mean, the government even does that on their own debt. They'll pay interest on it. And I think it is the case that there are some successful parts of the water industry. I'm totally not denying there are some failures, particularly a big one. But I think, you know, and it's also the case, and it won't be popular, that there's quite a lot of the current owners took over the debt that was there from the kind of noughties period when you had this kind of almost rampant money going out and going to the investors. That's the issue. The current government. That's why I have some sympathy with the current government and environment sector.
We just need to nationalise it. I'm sorry. It's
not agreeing on that.
Yeah. There's a sinkhole in my constituency. There's a sinkhole, and we just keep sinking more and more money into this failing service.
Like a metaphor for the.
Absolutely. And you know what? Can we even drink the stuff?
Really great chat. Thanks both very much indeed. I feel like we had both sides of the argument very, very passionately put there. Still to come on the Politics Hub. Now, we all come from somewhere. In fact, in our many splendid United Kingdom, there is a flag for every county. And this week, they're all at full mast along Whitehall for the historic County Flag Day. So we're going to have a little Politics Hub quiz. Name that flag. That is next.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog.
The force
It's incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back. Now, we love a flag on the Politics Hub, whether it's a St George's Cross, the Lionesses, or a Dayglow pennant in the Stone Circle at Glastonbury. All flags are good, obviously. Now, well, this week, we'll see Historic County Flags Day. So, historic county flags are flying along Whitehall and in Parliament Square. It's a celebration of local and national identity, so we thought we'd put our panel to the test in the brand new quiz, Name That Flag. Now, I should say that I think this is really hard, OK? So if you don't know any at home, there is no shame. There is no shame in not knowing this. I'm quite appalled of myself for not being as hot on my county flags as I should be. But here is our first one. Let's have a little look. Can either of you tell me what county that flag is for?
Lancashire.
It is Lancashire. That is good.
War of the Roses.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, of course. War of the Roses. Good historical knowledge. Keep it down your back. Don't give it away. Keep it in your back pocket.
Give him what I've got.
Right, what about this one? Which county is this?
Cornwall.
Oh, very good. It is Cornwall. 2 out of 2. Started easy. We were kind of like, you know, we're giving you a chance.
I go on a work trip to Cornwall once a year.
And I'm not
What about that one?
You of everything.
Is that's not a Staffordshire knot, is it?
It is Staffordshire. Look at this. I'm impressed. You guys are rattling through. You've got a Staffordshire connection there, haven't you?
In Staffordshire, yeah.
All right, OK. What about this one? Anyone know which one this one is?
I definitely should know that.
No.
I don't know, because of the steel, I go Yorkshire, but I don't think...
It's not. It's not Yorkshire. No. It's Middlesex.
Middlesex.
There you go, the historic county Middlesex. And finally...
That's Yorkshire.
That is Yorkshire. Very, very good. So what flag are you? Because you've got a Staffordshire connection. Would that be your...
Somewhere between Staffordshire... Enfield would be... Well, I don't know what...
Enfield, Middlesex, maybe.
Yeah. I didn't get that one.
I was talking to the team about which one would be my flag, and I said Yorkshire, because my parents are from Yorkshire, and my producer Sarah told me that I absolutely cannot say that I'm not from Yorkshire, that I'll get letters of complaint. So I basically grew up in London, so, which is probably right.
You can't claim that.
Right, one more. What about this one?
Oh.
Now this is getting hard now.
That
is...
Essex?
Surrey. Apparently.
Sorry.
That is hard. That is hard.
Would do better
that is,
I know, I honestly, I've got no idea what that is as well. There you go. Really good fun having you both on the programme tonight. Thanks very much for being on Politics Hub, and thanks for watching as well. I'll see you tomorrow at 7. Up next, it is the UK Tonight with Sarah J. Nee, and then, of course, at 9 p.m, You Got the World as well. But I will see you right here tomorrow at 7 p.m.